Welcome to Powered by Finova, where we spotlight the lenders making a significant difference in the future of the mortgage market. Today we're joined by Kevin Purvey from Coventry Building Society. Welcome, Kev.
Good to be here, Marcus.
Okay, so Kev, Coventry have had Finova's lending MSO platform in production since 2021, initially with Rate Switch. How have the last 4 years been?
Well, it's been a journey, Marcus. Probably for some context, it's worth just reflecting on how we got to here, I suppose. So the legacy system was, had been with us for many years, but actually had performed really well in the market, and we had great feedback. But I think from a strategic point of view, we were looking for a system, if we were to replatform, that was able to give us scale in mortgage origination, not only in the short to medium term, but actually beyond the planning period. And that became sort of like a very key focus for us. I think as we then sort of go through the process, we didn't have product rate switch capability in the legacy system, so it was a natural evolution for us to sort of start there first. And once we launched that to the market, broker adoption was really positive and quick, and then we've just started to adapt and add features as we've moved through the years.
Fantastic. And you rolled out new business transactions last year. How's that gone?
We did, and again, I think a little bit because of the way we designed that, because we rolled out product transfer first, actually the rollout for new business became much easier because the vast majority of brokers were already registered on the system. So our rollout process actually became much easier. Feedback from brokers, again, really positive from day one. They started to see the benefits, and probably the best way to describe that is reflected in our NPS score. So on a legacy system, really strong net promoter score of over 80. Yeah. And we're seeing,
which is great.
Yeah, and we're seeing with the use of MSO, we're seeing that substantially and significantly better already.
Fantastic.
So getting into the 90s.
It's great to hear, and that's a good score. That's one hell of a score. And how are Finova helping you with your long-term strategy?
So obviously we've talked a little bit about how you want the scalability and the efficiency in the system, and you can see that as we're going through the numbers. The important part, I think, is that longer term sort of vision about how we can then take more product as we work through, and that's really important to see how we could scale that quickly, and therefore the ability to also write those large volumes at peak times and come back very quickly is really important as well. So it's definitely a partnership on the one that we've entered into for the long term.
Fantastic. And look, in terms of feedback back from the team as well, the collaboration that we're seeing and the speed upon which we're getting to an agreed position is spoken about quite regularly. Yeah. So yeah, we feel the same in terms of that partnership and a really close relationship. Any records you'd be willing to share in terms of what Finova's MSO solution has enabled you?
Yeah, sure. So I guess everyone talks about it in the market. So our quickest offer is seven minutes. Okay. I know a few maybe done it a little quicker, but we're 7 minutes currently, but it's still relatively early doors. I think the other important one for us is days to offer. Yes. So again, compared to our legacy system, on average we're seeing that's 4 days quicker than our legacy system. If you think about that in the context of an NPS score I just mentioned in the 80s, to improve on that, I think is something special as well. So that's really positive. And then I think the other thing that maybe gets missed, but when we take a significant spike in volumes, our ability to recover to get back to normal service is now halved compared to our legacy system. So some really good improvements both internally but externally for our broker partners as well.
That's fantastic. And of course, I'm aware of what MSO is enabled to achieve, but when I hear it, I'm still even now shocked and surprised pleasantly by some of the things that we're enabling you to achieve. So it's great
really,
to hear that.
Really positive. And again, feedback from staff that use it is really positive as well.
Superb. So experience to date, this is always the tricky question, how would you rate the Finova team out of 10?
Well, it's a really strong relationship. So I think I spoke to colleagues. We'd call it a 9, and I don't think it gets much better than the partnership and the relationship that we've got. Although there's always room for improvement. Yeah. I think what's going to be interesting for us as we move into the next phase now, as we start and finish our rollout, is how that we become a more of a rather than adapting all the time, how do we start to really push on and leverage that MSO suite of products? Yep. So we take a slightly different stance in the relationship, I suppose, in terms of wanting to do more.
Great. Okay. And 3 words. How would you describe the Finova relationship in 3 words?
Collaborative, committed, and trustworthy.
Fantastic. couldn't ask for more than that. And I think you've mentioned it a number of times. My next question was going to be customer, supplier, or partnership. I think I've heard partnership referenced 5 or 6 times already. So it sounds like it's clear from your perspective that it's a partnership.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think, going back to what I said originally, it's very, very important that you not only choose the right software and platform, but you're working with people with a common goal and a common interest, I think, and that comes through. That the partnership piece, I think, is really important for us. That we're not just seen as just taking product from a supplier. We want to engage and work with you and other, obviously, the lender partners that we have here to make sure that we're shaping that future along with you. And probably, a good example of that, of how we've engaged, is we've recently launched limited company buy-to-let, which 2 years ago, whilst it's been talked about, wasn't on the roadmap. But we've now got to a position where we've launched that in the last couple of weeks, and the launch has been really successful. So I think that's a really good example of how we've both worked together. We've had to change timelines, but it relates to something that's relevant to the market, and we both needed to adapt to that.
Great. And you launched quite quickly. From a quality perspective, did that enable you to get from commencement of the programme to actual implementation into life quickly?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, it's all about the quality of the code, and I know the guys work really well and strongly with you. So in terms of, I think, speccing it as well is the important piece. So that early engagement about what your vision was and what our vision was and how we wanted it to work, I think it was a really good team effort across the board to get that launched in. Whilst it was a good 12 months from start to finish, there's a lot of work to get done for what is a new product line.
Fantastic. Definitely sounds like a partnership.
Agreed.
We recently held our customer advisory board. What value do you get from the customer advisory board sessions? And this is where we brought a number of lenders together for an open forum.
I think it's back to that insight. So as things move on, you get to hear what you've been talking about and what you're thinking about, but also we get collaboration from other lender partners that are also in the room. But I think as a collective, we get to shape what that roadmap looks like. So a little bit like the limited company buy-to-let example again, but there's others where we are discussing as a collective what we believe to be important for the market. We've all got our own idiosyncrasies in terms of how we want to develop that, and some things are more important or less important to others, but there's a general sense of direction, and our ability to influence that is really important.
Fantastic. And anything in particular that excited you in the recent customer advisory board?
Well,
without giving away, of course, what we covered.
No, I think the session on AI was really interesting in terms of how it's developed so quickly over the last sort of year, 18 months, and what are some of the use cases that maybe could be used that we could start to think about. I think it was a really good session.
Excellent. Thank you. Before I get to my last question, is there anything you feel we haven't covered that you proactively reference if someone were to ask you about your experience with Finova?
Again, we've talked about it a number of times, but I'd come back to the partnership piece, that it becomes really important if you're thinking about replatforming, whether you're coming out of a previous system or your in-house system. That power of the partnership and choosing the right partner is really, really important.
Fantastic. Thank you. And last question. It's been a fairly tumultuous time for the mortgage market recently. What's your prediction for the rest of the year?
Predictions are really hard at the best of times. They're even harder given what's going on in the world today with Trump and what we saw yesterday with India and Pakistan. So I think it's really, really difficult, but you sort of come back to, I guess, numbers that are quoted by IMLA. So a market of 270 billion, buy-to-let of 38 billion. They're still really strong numbers compared to where we've been a couple of years ago. But I guess maybe if you turn it around to more about, well, what can you focus on? What's important? What's here today? What can you how can you influence that? There's 1.8 million customers that are maturing during the 25 that are coming off fixed rate mortgages, which creates a great opportunity for both lenders and our broker partners. So sort of focus there, I think. And also, maybe more topical, I think yesterday FCA announced a look at the new, or looking at how they might look at the advice rules. So again, that's still the early doors. It's only been out 24 hours, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But I think it's a really positive market, probably with a few base rate cuts to come, maybe one tomorrow.
Maybe. Kev, thank you ever so much.
Pleasure.
Really appreciate your time.